talked about the high profile cases, and you can mention some, but as far as the anatomy of a homicide investigation in particular, because you worked that for a while, and we'll touch on intelligence later. So, I mean, let's just put the scenario this way. I died, I forgot to get the right chicken again at Walmart. My mom's had enough, and I'm gone. I'm just kidding. But the point is, let's put it that way. There you have a victim, and obviously the family wants justice. You want justice. Take me through, what do you do, what you're looking for, and how you zero in on the person that you believe is responsible.
Well, right off the bat, you're working on a homicide case. You have a tremendous responsibility. And what I mean by that is, the person is dead. They can no longer speak for themselves. So now you have to be an advocate and speak for that person. What I mean by that is, you have to try and find the person that did it and seek justice for that person. And the family, I mean, no matter who the victim was, whether it be an innocent person that was robbed on the street and shot and killed, or it could have been a drug dealer. The family of those people, now, just because a guy's a drug dealer doesn't mean that his family has to suffer the consequences of his life. There's still a mother, there's still a wife, there's still children, there's still relatives. And we would always try to make a relationship with the family, because a lot of times good information comes out of the family. So right off the bat, we would try to do that. It's a big responsibility. And a lot of times, when you work in a homicide case, things can happen quickly. You can be on a case and within hours you got the perpetrator in custody. Sometimes you can have the perpetrator in custody immediately, depending on what case. I mean, I had cases like that. Or sometimes investigations can drag on for long periods of time. And there are two particular cases that I worked on over my time in the Detective Bureau, homicide investigations, that were never solved to this day. Very good idea of who was responsible for those murders, but the evidence just never came through to put a case together to arrest those people. And those kind of things always stay with me, those two particular cases. And I always, during my years in the bureau, I would touch base with different detectives from different units, organized crime, because one of them was kind of related to organized crime. So I would always try to, feed that information on my case to the guys that are working on organized crime cases and see if anything ever shook out. And then there was another case where also maybe a touch of organized crime in that one. And I would always try and stay, when I left the Queen Island precinct, I try and stay in touch with the detective who caught the case after me. Of course, all the homicides remain open until they're closed, until an arrest is made. So, for the most part, most of the cases that I worked on, I worked on probably hundreds of cases, and not always my case. It's not always my turn to catch the homicide. There's 12, 15 detectives in the squad, so they would rotate around. And but we always knew our place, and we always knew what to do. And a lot of times when I had homicide victims, we would go to make a rapport with the family. We would go to the wake, or we would go to the funeral and go pay our respects and show the family, we're not just cold, callous detectives that are investigating this case. We're going to show you guys respect. We're going to speak for the victim. We're going to speak for the dead. So, Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, he always refers to, we do God's work, and it's, in a way, it really is. We're trying to do things for a person that can no longer speak for themselves. So a lot of times, I guess it is God's work.
One case I do want to ask you about, I know you mentioned a while ago working on it, or at least having something to do with it, and you can dive deep into it, is that there was a police murder you worked, and I'll set the stage. Detective Lewis Miller was a really respected detective with the NYPD. He was instrumental in training so many different officers over the years and helping them learn the job. And he was beloved for that. And he could have retired a long time ago, but he was one of these lifers that I guess was looking to go up until the mandatory retirement age. And he's 61 in 1987. He's got 34 years in the job. And there's a report of a robbery in progress. He and his partner go to respond to this robbery. And long story short, unfortunately, a shootout erupts. Gunfire is exchanged between the responding detectives and the perpetrators. Detective Miller is struck and he's killed. And so here's someone that obviously, I mean, anytime you lose a civil servant in the line of duty, police or fire, it's very sad. But of course, here's someone who had devoted his life and given so much to the department, and he loses his life that way, so close to retirement. Take me through working that case and finding those responsible for murdering Detective Miller.
Yeah, that was the second worst day on the job for me, only second to 9/11, and that was just a horrible, horrible day. I was actually, it was March 1986. I was in anti-crime at the time, and plain clothes. We were actually, it was myself, police officer at the time, became a sergeant, retired as a sergeant, Bobby Patron, who died actually from exposure from 9/11. And we had a sergeant with us, Jack Travitz, who I think just recently retired as an inspector. So the three of us were in a car. We were getting gas in 7-1 precinct. And we heard the call come over. The original call wasn't a robbery. It was actually a burglary. Ocean Avenue. I think it was 815 Ocean Avenue. Came over as a burglary on the 5th floor. So what happened was Louis Miller was uh, uh, working in the 7-0 precinct. He worked in NSU 10 out of the 6-1, but he would take the rookies and he would come to the 7-0 precinct and they would pick up a sector. So they were sector John, or they would always take the sector in the bad end of the precinct. So, and that was in their sector. It was, I believe it was sector John. Uh, Anyways, the call comes over as a burglary on Ocean Avenue. Now, Louis, I think, was with either 2 or 3 rookies. Uh, the robbery guys, the rip guys, was Mark Del Pino and Charlie Platt. They responded as backup. So they converge in the front of the building. They meet in the front of the building, and they come up with a plan. They leave one of the rookies downstairs, and they say, all right, we're going to go up, and you keep an eye on things down here. Anybody comes out of the building that looks suspicious, stop them. So it was a female police officer. She's down in the lobby. So they get into the elevator, and the plan was that Louis Miller and Mark Del Pino were going to get out on the 4th floor, and Charlie Platt and the other 2 rookies were going to get out on the 6th floor, and they were going to come down the staircase to sandwich in the perpetrators that are allegedly doing the burglary on the 5th floor. And I believe there was multiple calls about this burglary, so they thought it was a good job because a lot of times you get these uh, 911 call, and there's not a lot of weight to it, based on what the call actually says, but there was description. There was a couple of calls about it. So it was pretty certain somebody was on that 5th floor breaking in. So when Louis and Mark get out of the elevator on the 4th floor, the 2 bad guys had committed a burglary on the 5th floor, but now they were on the 4th floor, and they were actually had picks in the lock of a door. So when they get out of the elevator, they see these 2 guys and they throw them up on the wall. They try to, they pulled the pick out of the lock, and they got the 2 guys up on the wall. Now, Charlie Platt and the other 2 police officers are up getting out of the elevator on the 6th floor. So while they have the guys on the wall, the guy has a gun in his waistband. And as Louis is tossing him, he pulls out the gun and he shoots right under his arm, and he hits Louis in the chest, in the belly, and in the groin. And a gun battle ensues between Mark and the guy. And during the gun battle, Mark is shot once in the back. The bad guy is shot multiple times, but he's able to escape. And the second bad guy is shot in his DOA. So the job comes over now. Shots fired, a cop shot. So we race to the scene. And I think I was probably about the 4th or the 5th car on the scene. We go running into the building. Now, as we pull up, I see they're loading Louis Miller into a bunch of cops are carrying him. They put him in a radio car. They take off to the hospital. Mark comes out holding his back. He gets in a radio car. They race off to the hospital with him. So we're trying to figure out what went on. And all we know is the 4th floor. So me and Bobby Patron and Jack Travitz, we go running up. And as we get to the staircase in the 4th floor, there's a guy laying shot, unconscious. He's in between the door from the hallway into the staircase. And he's wearing a trench coat. And he's got a shirt and tie on. And I think he's an innocent bystander. I don't know if he's a perpetrator this time. So I call for a bus, which is police jargon for an ambulance. I call for an ambulance. And Bobby Patron and I, we flip the guy over, and we're going to give him, first aid. I'm trying to feel for a pulse. And he had one of those zip briefcases. And Bobby Patron opens it. His bullets and the handcuffs in there. Bobby says, Phil, I think this guy's a bad guy, you know? So we're uncertain at this time. Ambulance responds. Ambulance says, I got a pulse. They load him onto the stretcher. Inspector from the precinct at the time was Walter Melnick. He says to me, Phil, I want you to stay with this guy until he's pronounced dead. If that happens, you go with him to the hospital. Do not leave his side. So I go with him, you know, in the ambulance. And funny thing, recently there's a website on Facebook. There's I forgot what it's called, FDNY, NYPD. It's an ex-reporter from Daily News that does. He posts pictures, and sure enough, there's pictures of me on his Facebook page from that shooting, coming out of the building with the guy on the stretcher and all. So anyhow, we go off to the hospital, and I get to the hospital. Louis Miller's on the gurney, and he's shot, and it's not looking good. He's going out of the picture. He's really, you know, it's horrible. And I have the guy who is shot that also dies, and I'm standing right next to him. I'm in front of him here, and Louis Miller's on the next gurney, and Mark Del Pino was like across the room. This is Kings County Hospital trauma unit, and I mean, they're the guy that I'm with. They're gutting. They're opening his chest up. They're trying to massage his heart to bring him back, and they're doing the exact same thing to Louis. And it was horrible. I can't even explain it. And I say it was my worst day on the police force. I mean, his chest was wide open, and they were trying to massage his heart to bring him back to life. And you know, neither one of them is responding. And now they caught the second perpetrator, and he's shot. And he comes wheeling in, and I'm you know, so I'm here. Right here in front of me is the second bad guy that I'm with, and the doctors are trying to work on him. They're working on Louis Miller. They pronounced Louis dead, and now they're working on the guy who shot like 3 times, but they're basically superficial wounds. So when he comes wheeling in, I look at him, and I got to tell you, at that moment, I knew he killed Louis Miller, and Louis next to me on a gurney, and it took every ounce of strength in my body not to take my gun out and just execute the guy. I mean, that literally went for my mind, you know. And he looked at me and he goes, I didn't mean to kill that old man. I didn't mean to kill him. So when I heard him, he was basically making a confession. So there was a detective in the room that was talking to Mark Del Pino, and I knew him. It was Willie Hernandez. And I said, Willie, come here. I said, this guy's confessing. I said, repeat it to me. He goes, oh, I didn't mean to shoot that old man. I didn't mean to shoot the old man. And you know, Willie took the statement down, and eventually, you know, he was tried and convicted. But it was such a crazy day because now we had Mark Del Pino shot, Louis shot, the 2 bad guys shot. We're all in that trauma unit. And it just so happened that prior to us being involved in this crazy shootout and all winding up at the hospital, a corrections bus had overturned on the way to court. They had all these prisoners in there, and a lot of them were being treated in the same hospital. So it was like a chaos scene there. It was all these correction guys keeping an eye on the prisoners that were being treated. You know, we had guys in shackles on gurneys, and we had all of this going on. And here comes Mayor Koch and the police commissioner, and it was just a surreal moment. It was very, very sad. So now time starts to pass. Louis dead. The other perp is dead. I know Mark is okay. He's shot, but he's okay. And the bad guys, you know, arrested by the 6-7 anti-crime. Some really great cops there. I got to mention their name. Chris Caulfield, not Chris, his brother. Oh, Tommy Caulfield and Tony Labrano and Joe Calabrese. Those are the 3 I can remember. They were 6-7 guys. They actually anti-crime guys. They made the collar. And so now, you know, things are starting to calm down. And I'm like, I realize, you know, I was in the 7-0 precinct, a cop was shot and killed. It's got to be on the news. My mother must be going crazy. So I sneak off to an x-ray room. I find the dark x-ray room, and there's a phone in there, and I call my mother. And this is probably about maybe an hour in, you know. All this confusion is going on. So I call. I said, Ma, how you doing? She's good. What's going on? I said, listen. I said, you're going to hear on the news that a cop got shot. I go, oh. She's like, what? And she's like, who is it? You know, I just, like, it hit me at that point. And I said, it's Louis Miller. And when I said the words, it was like, I became a little emotional, you know, like I realized that we lost Louis Miller, you know, and she knew some of my partners. She knew Charlie Martini. She knew Joe Caldera. And, are you all right? She started to cry, and I said, yeah, I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay. I said, but I just wanted to let you know so you didn't see it on the news, but it was just, and in that moment, I teared up a little bit, but I said, listen, I'm going to go. Everything's okay. I hung up the phone and then I just went right back into it, and it just like as it's happening, you don't really realize it. You're just doing what you got to do. Like it dawned on me to call over that detective. That was going to be a very important statement. He was basically making a spontaneous statement that he shot Louis Miller. So it was very important. And it was just thank God I had the mindset to call him over and get that statement. I think that was, it was kind of not that difficult of a case to prove that they were the shooters and all, but I think he was found with the gun and everything. The gun was recovered in his pocket. So, but I think that was a very important part of the case. If you wanted to have a solid case, you needed every bit of evidence. So I had the mindset at that moment to call. I mean, I'm sure the detectives would have talked to him anyhow. He may have made that statement again, but I called the detective over and made him hear that statement, that spontaneous statement. So. But yeah, that was a tough day. That was one of my toughest days on the job. And Louis Miller was just such a sweetheart of a guy. The day he was killed, when he came into the precinct that morning, because they would come from the 6-1 precinct, they would come into the 7-0, they had to check in with the desk. I saw him 2 hours before he was killed. I saw him in the precinct. How you doing, Louis? Blah, blah, blah. And he had this thing. He would always come into the precinct and he would always give candy to the 124 room. The 124 room was civilian workers that would type up reports and stuff like that. And he would always bring candy to them because he was going to dump reports at them at the end of the day and he didn't want them to be pissed at him. He brought candy in for them and he was just really a good guy. He was a sweetheart of a guy. Such a shame, such a loss. But yeah, that was a terrible day.
And if you go to his memorial page, I mean, still to this day, so many people post fond memories of him, saying, "Oh, he trained me. He helped me learn this. He taught me this lesson, and I taught it to the guys that it came in when I got a little bit of seniority." So his legacy is a great one. Yeah, all these years, almost it's going to be 35 years next year that
Yep.
that he was killed. So I want to get to, and we're talking with Phil Grimaldi here in the Mike podcast. It's not as good as I thought it would be. It's been better, which is saying something because Phil's a great guest on Off the Cuff and Duty Ron, and I was really excited to have him. And it's been even better than I thought it was going to be, which is just because Phil's a great guest, and I'm really glad he's here.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem. It's been a lot of fun talking with you. So April of 2001, you go into the intelligence division. Now, when we think of the intelligence division of nowadays, of course, we think immediately of terrorism because of the target that New York City is, and what is the history of terrorism recently in New York City. I mean, not even with 9/11, just the truck attack a number of years ago in Manhattan and the attempted pipe bombing. So intelligence is vital. And when you got to intelligence in April of 2001, 9/11 was 5 months away. This is 8 years after the attack on the Trade Center with the bombing in 93. But there's other aspects to intelligence too. So getting to intelligence first, why did you want to go there? How did the opportunity open up? And second, before 9/11, which we'll get to in a moment, what kind of things were you originally investigating in that unit?
Okay. In April 2001, police commissioner at the time said that he wanted to start this intelligence unit that was going to be, Bernie Carrick was the police commissioner. He wanted to start an intelligence division that was going to work at precinct level. Now, the intelligence division basically they would work with the detective bureau and all the different specialty units, and they would kind of gain intelligence. They would respond and get intelligence and put it in databases, or they would give intelligence. But Carrick wanted to have a more centralized unit that worked with the local precincts. And what his goal was to get information on even minor arrests, interview everybody that was arrested in a precinct. So you would have a field intelligence officer that worked in the precinct, and then you'd have the officers, the detectives like myself, that would work out of the centralized unit, which in each borough there was we called it the BAT, the Brooklyn Army Terminal. We worked out of the BAT. And so I had assigned to me, let's say I had 3 precincts. So I would have a sergeant that was an FIA or a field intelligence officer from each precinct. So he would do a debriefing and say, listen, this guy wants to give some information, come down. So what we would do, we would run with the information. So specifically, let's say it was a narcotics information. So I had a guy that was arrested in Coney Island, and he was arrested for, I think, some silly thing of having possession of a stun gun or something. And he knew where they were dealing large amounts of marijuana. So we put the whole thing together, and we would make a nice, neat package. We would do all the recon, all the intelligence on the location. We would take pictures, whatever we had to do. We would run the location through our computer databases, and then we would actually take the person, sign them up as an informant, and go get a search warrant, and we would execute the search warrant. So that was really the gist of how we would do things. And I would say probably half the time, even though it was before 9/11, we would be targeting these looking for terrorism angles, really. And we knew that there were groups within the city that were funneling money to terrorists. And I don't want to get too much into what we were doing because it's the intelligence division. I don't want to really, reveal too much information, but we had some intelligence gathering that we were doing in the Middle Eastern community, because we knew that there was, like I said, there was funding going to terrorist groups over in Afghanistan and different places around the world. So 50% of our focus was on that, and the other 50% was on traditional crime. It could be organized crime, it could be narcotics, it could be guns. A lot of times we were taking guns. So then 9/11 happened. We all respond to ground zero that day, and I worked with a great team of guys. The intelligence division, I got to say, I worked with great people. I had great bosses there. The guy that interviewed me for the position was an inspector from the housing police, John Cutter. He knew me from the 6-0 squad. He was a major case. I think he was a lieutenant at the time when I worked in 6-0. Now he was an inspector. He interviewed me for the assignment. The intelligence division picked me up right away. My boss was John Mitchell. I worked with two other great detectives, Mike Lopez and Eddie Driscoll. I actually worked with Eddie's brother in the 7-0. We were in anti-crime together, Jack Driscoll. Just so many people, too many to mention. Carol Arazen was a real great female detective that we work with. Denise Trocho, real good people. We worked with a lot of nice people, and I had a great time there. But now 9/11 happens. We all respond down there. And from 9/11 till the time I retired in 2003, we did just counterterrorism leads. We worked closely with JTTF, which was the Joint Terrorism Task Force, which was a federal partnership with the NYPD. We worked with counterterrorism. So leads would come in and they would give us the leads and we would go follow them up. And a lot of times there would be nonsense leads and we would determine that. And a lot of times there would be good leads, it would lead us to further things that we would, turn over some information. And we were working closely. I mean, every lead we went on, we worked with the FBI. And I can remember one in particular was probably weeks after 9/11, after they sent the anthrax to Dan Rather and stuff. We got a call that over at Penn Station, there was a person that found a white envelope with white powder dripping out of it, and it was addressed to Dan Rather. So we get over there, and what happened was the guy stopped a reservist, an Army reservist, National Guardsman that was in that area, because we had, in New York, there was help from everywhere. So the National Guard was walking around, doing patrols in Penn Station. Not Penn Station. That was the other one there.
Grand Central.
Grand Central. That's it. I'm sorry. It's Grand Central Station. So he stopped this officer outside and said, "Listen, I found this white powder." And unfortunately, not knowing how to deal with anthrax, they took it inside to the Grand Central. There's a police station there. I think it's Metro North Police. They brought it into the police station and they put it in the safe. So when we get there, we go down into the Penn Station Police, and they show us a picture of it. They took a Polaroid photo of it. I was like, well, if it's real anthrax, we're all in trouble, because you got an air system in here we could all be contaminated with this anthrax, So we go in and we interrogate the guy, and it turns out that he had overstayed his visa. He was from India or Pakistan. I think it was India. And he wanted to go back to India, and he didn't want to pay his airfare, so he thought if he came up with this story that he would be deported. And we got him to admit that it was baby powder and it was nonsense. And but there was a Hercules team that responded. They were able to test while we had him in the interview room. They were testing to see if the powder was actually anthrax. But and then because he lied to federal agents, we had the FBI with us. They charged him with filing a false police report, lying to federal agent, all of that. And I never followed up on what actually happened with it. But so I did that from that time until I retired in 2003. And basically, it was just an unbelievable experience to be down at ground zero. I wound up developing several illnesses related to my exposure down there. It started in like 2007. I ran into a colleague, Billy Serpy, who was a retired lieutenant who had cancer from 9/11. He ran into me in Brooklyn, and he said, you don't sound good. Your sinus is this. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I was trying to be this macho cop, and I thought that the 9/11 medical monitoring was for people that had cancer and stuff like that. So I kind of blew it off, and he wouldn't leave me until I promised him that I was going to go for the screening, because I had gotten all the paperwork on it, and I never really followed up on it. But he's like, no, I'm telling you, this is for everybody. Your sinuses don't sound good. You breathe. And I started to say, you know what, my breathing's not good. The sinuses, I was having some nightmares. There was a whole bunch of things going on. Anyway, I go to, they had it in Rutgers in New Jersey. And I went there, and was living in Staten Island at the time. And I went there, and I saw a professor by the name of Dr. Irish Unison that saw me, and everyone related to that program was fantastic. They couldn't have been nice enough. They couldn't have been sweet enough. The nurses, the staff there, I can't say enough. I still go every year for my screenings, and I got to mention some really great people. Brenda that works there, and Maria Negrowski, her husband's a retired police officer, and just everybody there. Dr. Udis, and I can't say that if it wasn't for them, I might not be here today, because all of the illness that I had, my breathing was diminished 23%. I had asthma, acid reflux, sleep apnea, PTS, all these different things. And they started me on all kinds of medications, got me to see all these different doctors and stuff. They took a precancerous polyp out of my colon over time, and just everything that was there for us. It helped us. And I still suffer with I take sinus sprays and my asthma and all the different things. The sleep apnea is terrible, but I really think a lot of people died from relation to exposure down at ground zero. So I really have to tip my hat to all of those people. And it's now called the World Trade Center Health Program. I can't say enough about it. Anybody that didn't go get screened, do it. If you're there and you have any kind of these symptoms, if you go there and they tell you you're 100% healthy, great. But chances are you're going to have, there's like 5 or 6 things that everybody has: chronic sinusitis, asthma, acid reflux, sleep apnea, and PTS. Those things, almost every one of the people that was down at ground zero for an extended period of time, even if you're just there that one day, will have those things. And so I can't stress it enough, implore people enough, go get tested. I think Billy Serpy is a good friend of mine till this day, and I always touch base with him. And I think if it wasn't for him, who knows if I would have been here today,
Yeah, and as I mentioned the Officer Down Memorial page earlier, you go through the list of the NYPD personnel who've lost their lives in the line of duty, and so many dating back to April of 2003. You see their name, their rank, and the day they died. 9/11 related illness, 9/11 related illness, 9/11 related illness. And it's a day that, unfortunately, 20 years later is still killing. And I think what changed the game is Detective James Zadroga and the Zadroga Act.
100%.
That really, and if you don't know who James, for my listeners, James Zadroga is, he was a detective at the NYPD who passed away in early 2006 from illnesses related to his work at Ground Zero. And there's a bill that's since been passed in his name, in his memory, that is helping first responders to this day, and hopefully will continue to. So a couple things I want to hit on before.
Can I just make one more comment about
Please.
that, please?
Yeah.
Uh, James Zadroga was a detective in the detective bureau that toiled at ground zero for, I think, about 9 months or more. When he developed all these illnesses, he died. They did an autopsy and they found all the components of what we were breathing in his lungs and stuff. So that's where the Zadroga bill was named. There was funding given by the federal government. But I have to mention, the Zadroga bill was in his name, and it was like he caught the ball and he carried it to the goal line, but he didn't carry it over the goal line. I'd have to give props to John Field of the Feel Good Foundation, John Stewart. Everybody knows who John Stewart is. And there was a detective by the name of Lou Alvarez. When the funding was starting to run out, those three individuals went to Congress, testified. Lou Alvarez was horribly stricken with cancer. He barely could walk. And he went to Congress and he poured his heart out. And I just say, what a hero in my eyes. That's a true hero. John Field still to this day does the Feel Good Foundation, does a lot of stuff for guys that are suffering from 9/11. When I went before the medical board, because I was found disabled under the 9/11 bill, and I called John for help, and he was there. He got right back to me, and so those people really need to be named, and they need to be mentioned as heroes. They did a lot for all the first responders, and just there's a lot of other foundations. I mean, there's the Steven Siller Foundation, great organization. There's so many charities out there, and Gary Sinise, he does a lot for the Wounded Warriors as well as law enforcement, firemen, and there's an actor from Sopranos. He's in charge. He's on the board of can't think of his name, Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi does a lot for the firemen. Friend of mine, John Sorrentino, who is a housing cop that became a fireman, he's on the board of this. I think it's called Friends of the Firemen. Those are some great organizations. I just want to get that in there. There's so much that can be said for those guys. They work hard, tirelessly. John's a big advocate of the families and of all the 343 firemen who were killed just on 9/11. I mean, that's a huge number. And John lost 8 firemen in his firehouse, and he's a really great guy, and he does a lot for the families. He's like a spokesperson for the families and in the fire department. So I'm glad we got to mention those names.
Absolutely. And Lou Alvarez was a bomb squad guy. And as my listeners know, I have the miniseries Tales from the Boom Room, in which I profile members of the bomb squad. If you want, for my listeners, go back and listen to my conversation with Jim Carano. Jim actually trained Lou when Lou first got to the squad in the mid 2000s. And Lou was a great guy, and he's very much missed. So before I get to the concluding segment, as I mentioned throughout the show, you were a frequent guest on Duty Ron's channel. You're a frequent guest on Off the Cuff. Where did that start? Because you're a very popular panelist. The audience really loves you, and just tell me where that started for you.
I was never afraid of the TV cameras because they would appear on a lot of times. Like I said, they were snapping pictures of me the day Louis Miller was killed, and I found those pictures on the internet. And but I really say that I got my fear of the camera out of me from testifying in court. I mean, when you get thrown into a courtroom and you have a judge, and judges don't take no nonsense. I've had judges tell me sit up when I was, testifying. I'd been up all night. I was in Central booking. They called me to testify in a case. I had no sleep in me. I'd been up for like 30 hours already, and I got into it was on a hearing. It wasn't in a trial, but the judge actually snapped me like, sit up in your chair. You're testifying in court. And I'm sorry, you're right. I've been up for 30 hours. Whatever it was. So now you're in court. You testify your hearing. You have the DA trying to present the case or present the evidence. You have a defense attorney attacking your credibility, so to speak, and attacking your testimony. And you have the judge ruling. And then you go from there. You go to a trial. Now, in a trial, you have 15, 16 jurors, because there's 12 and then the alternates. You have the whole courtroom. There's the family of the bad guy, the family of the good guy, let's say, or there's different people in the audience. You have, you're now speaking in front of maybe 50, 75 people. It could be as many as that, So, but what I always did was when I testified in court, I knew what I did in the case. I knew what steps I took. So I was always very confident and I was certain. But what happened was, I think that made me better and more proficient at being able to talk on camera. And back in 2016, I was retired many years, and I was in touch with a really great guy by the name of Rick Torelli, who had a television show. Him and Kevin Kaufman had developed a show. He's a retired first grade detective, Ricky. I knew him because I was an officer, not an officer, I was a delegate in the DEA, and my partner was an officer in the DEA, which is the Detectives Endowment Association. I knew Rick from then, and I had seen him at a function, and I knew he had this television show, and he had talked to me previously about, giving him some stories from some of the high profile cases I had worked on and stuff. So I was like, Rick, you want to go over some stories? He's like, yeah, yeah. He goes, you know what? He goes, you want to play a detective on my show? Now I thought he was kidding. 2016, I was starting to feel better from all my 9/11 stuff. I was kind of, I wouldn't say I was in a depression, but I was kind of like missing the job. And, I'd gone through all these years from 2007, of illnesses and fighting all this stuff. And I was, I was doing better. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll play a detective. I thought he was kidding. I had no reason to believe he was being honest. Gives me his card. He's like, all right, call me on, whatever it was the next day. And so I call him. I said, Rick, what's going on? I said, we're going to talk about stories. He's like, yeah, yeah. He goes, but I want you to play a detective on the show. He goes, can you come into the city? I said, yeah, sure. I'm still not 100% certain about it. He's like, yeah, you have to do an audition, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I'm going to have the girl call you. It's okay. So the next day, the girl calls me. She says, can you come into the city today to do the audition? I said, well, it's kind of like, it's a Friday. All right, can you come Monday? I said, yeah, yeah. So she sends me 2 or 3 lines that I have to read about doing an interrogation. I go into the city. I read the 2 or 3 lines. She says, okay, we're going to use you. Now I'm thinking, okay, I don't know nothing about acting. I don't know nothing about this stuff. So she says, yeah, we're going to be filming in a couple of weeks. We'll definitely be in touch with you. 2 weeks goes by. I says, let me shoot Ricky a text. I shoot him a text. I says, Rick, am I getting out my brand new suit? I'll never forget. It was like a Monday. And he's like, yeah. He goes, why? Why are you texting me? Didn't they get a hold of you? We're filming on Friday. So I'm like, I don't know anything about this. I was like, no, nobody got a hold of me yet. So the girl calls me and she says, yeah, be in Queens on Friday morning at 10 a.m. Blah, 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 blah. So now I don't know what to expect. He goes, don't worry, I'll explain it to her. I'll explain everything to you when you get there. So I think the call time was 11 o'clock. I said 10, but it was 11 o'clock. But I get there at 10. I'm going to be early for this and everything. I get there. It's a location in Queens, a residential area. Nobody's there. So I text him. I says, Rick, this is the address. He goes, no, no, we're on our way. We're on our way. So a car pulls up and I see a guy in a car and he's in a suit. I said, this guy's got to be another cop. I go over, I knock on the window. Hey, buddy, how are you? I says, Phil Grimaldi, Bill Cannon. I says, Bill Cannon, how are you? Yeah, I'm retired sergeant. I says, you working on the show? Yeah, yeah. I says, listen, Bill, I know nothing about it. He's, I did it a couple of times already. Don't worry. He goes, just be yourself. He goes, and it'll all work out. He goes, I'll show you what to do. So this is how I developed my friendship with Bill Cannon. We, now the whole crew comes, they start setting up lights, cameras, all of that. And the first scene we're going to do is we're going to interview a woman about a homicide. And we're outside. And he goes, listen, he goes, I'll ask her a question. You ask her a question. They had given us a script, but we didn't have to really stick to the script. He goes, I'll ask you a question. You ask a question. We'll do it like that. So, okay. I asked the question. He asked the question. Cut. I was like, they were like, oh, that was good. I'm like, all right. And now, the next scene, they're putting tape by our feet, stand here, face that way, you get here. And before you know it, it was like, I started to get into like my investigative mode. We're doing an interview inside a house. Then we're supposed to be in a precinct. And we do this it took about 5 days of filming, 5 different days. And we do this whole episode for the perfect murder. And the story we're doing is a detective by the name of Billy Clark, NYPD executive producer. He's retired. He became an executive producer on NYPD. It's his story. And I played Billy Clark. So it was like all this was happening so quick, and the show comes off. It was really, I thought we really did a great job. Bill and I remained friends after that. We tried to work on, he went on to do a few more episodes of Perfect Murder. I did like 3 of them, and I incorporated some of my stories. I actually worked on a case where I played my partner. It was my partner's case. It was a great case, and so it really just, it was going well. We did. I did 3 seasons. I did 3 episodes. I think Bill must have did about 7 or 8. He did some of his stories where he narrated, some where he played detective, and he went on to do some acting. He did stand-up comedy and stuff. So now he starts this podcast in the last couple of years, and I stopped bugging him. Bill, let me come on the show. I want to tell some stories and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, and he puts me on, and he's like, oh, you did great, you're good for the stuff. And it kind of morphed from police off the cuff. Now we're into this police off the cuff, after hours, real crime stories. And we just got into a couple of cases. We got into a national case recently, the Summer Wells case. And I just tell you, the numbers just blew up. And for me, it's therapeutic, believe it or not. I know it's going to sound corny, but I feel like I'm still in the job when we talk about it. I'm talking about different things that I would do, and different experiences. And I don't know. It's a feel good type thing. He developed an audience. He has some terrific guests. I mean, we got Joe Pistone coming on, aka Donnie Brasco. They did that motion picture
Twice.
We're going to be right. We have him coming on again. I believe it's the 18th of August, a Wednesday night. We have him with a retired detective by the name of Tommy Dades, organized crime expert. I worked with Tommy. I'm friends with Tommy. I talk to him every day. So we're going to have Tommy, me, Bill, and Joe Pistone, who's just like textbook undercover for 6 years. He was a mobster. He was just about being made in organized crime in the mafia. So it's going to be fantastic. And, wherever it takes us, it takes us. I love doing it. I have great, praise for Bill and his show. And Duty Ron, forget it. He's fantastic as well. He's got a great audience, a great show. Been on his show. We have an attorney that comes on, Joe Murray, an ex-cop. He's fantastic. So
he's been on this show.
What's that?
He's been on this show too.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, if you guys watch the show, the subscribers out there, you see that, we got great guests, we got great people, and I don't know. It's just, for me, it's just a lot of fun doing it, and I enjoy it.
It's a lot of fun being a part of it. I often say, listen, there have been a lot of people that are responsible for the show becoming, because this is not the first version of the show. I started doing this when I was 17, but I was in college at the time. I couldn't juggle college and this, and so I stopped for a while just so I could focus on finishing up school and whatnot. And when I brought back the show, I didn't know what this was going to be. I was a fan of Off the Cuff for a while. I've been listening for a while. But I've always said, had it not been for Mark DeMeo and Bill Cannon, amongst others, but definitely those two, and I have to include them in there. The reason I'm talking to you, the reason I've been able to talk to all these different people that are tremendous is because of those two. So a big shout out to them, because this show is not what it is, and my audience isn't what it is without those two. So I always conclude with the segment of this podcast called Rapid Fire. It consists of 5 hit and run questions from me and 5 hit and run answers from you. And you can say pass.
Round. I call it lightning round.
It is a lightning round, and you can say pass if you want to. So first, and this is why I say you can say pass in the event if the story isn't G-rated, funniest call you ever responded to.
Oh, funniest call. I got a funny one real quick. Me and my partner doing anti-crime, middle of the summer. We're driving down Church Avenue. It's a Saturday afternoon, busy, a lot of people. All of a sudden, a car comes from the other side of the street, cuts us off. It's a livery cab driver, Chinese guy, jumps out of the car. He's got no pants on. I just got robbed. I put him in the car. They go that way, So now I start putting over the description, and he tells me who it is. I put over the description, male, 19 years old. What is he wearing? He starts telling me what he's wearing. And what they take, they took $60, blah, 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 blah. I go, Central, be advised, they took $60 and they took his pants. And the guy goes, no, they don't take pants. Hot in car. So it was so hot out. It was 95 degrees. This livery driver decided to take his pants off. And, I couldn't even talk on the radio. I was laughing so hard. But the guys eventually got away. We took a report, but I thought that was quite comical.
I mean, listen, in the heat, in the summer heat, anything goes. I can't blame the man. I can't. So second, best advice anyone ever gave you?
Best advice anybody ever gave me: come home to your family in one piece. And that was over in the police academy and many times through the course of my career. Safety first, come home in one piece.
Third, favorite squad room snack?
Favorite squad room snack? I tell you, squad room's got to be a cup of coffee and a bagel or a piece of cake because, you're doing those long hours. I mean, I was up for 3 days one time, legitimately up, went to work on a Wednesday afternoon, came home on a Saturday morning. So a cup of coffee and whatever was in a bagel, a donut, a piece of cake.
Fourth, if not for becoming a police officer, what other career could you have seen yourself pursuing and enjoying?
Believe it or not, I actually wanted to be a doctor when I was a kid, and I still find the medical field intriguing. I'm like, my wife and kids call me Dr. Phil because anytime somebody's got a symptom, I could be this. And my middle daughter is actually studying to be a physician's assistant. She's in the program right now. So maybe a little of my medical inquisitiveness rubbed off on her. My daughter, Valentina, God bless her.
Rooting for her. Hope she does well.
So fifth and finally, knowing what you know now, having the experiences that you've had, if you can go back in time to young Phil Grimaldi and give him some advice, what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
A younger version of myself. You know, that's a hard one. Advice, you mean related to the job or just life in general?
The job, life in general, whatever you want to, whatever route you want to go is fine.
I life in general, I had children late in life. I got married when I was 37. I had my first child 38. I would have done that a little bit earlier in life. I like to party, I guess, and bouncing around. And I didn't put much. I was so into being a cop. Starting a family really wasn't on the forefront for me. But looking back, I had my third daughter, my daughter Annabella. I had 3 daughters, and my daughter Alexandra is my oldest. My daughter Annabella was born a year after I retired. So running around and chasing kids, little babies after you're retired is not always the best thing. So I guess maybe start a family. Nothing better than having a family. I got to tell you, it's the best feeling in the world. I have a great wife and I have a great family, and maybe having children a little early would be some advice I would have gave to myself early on.
And that concludes what's been a very fun episode of the Mike to New Haven podcast. It's been great having you on, Phil. I always like to have the guests, if they want to put anything out there, put it out there, and then I'll plug myself. Is there anything you want to put out there?
Well, I'd love to put out, you mentioned it already, Duty Ron show, Prime Time with Duty Ron's got a great show. I've been on it many times. Look them up, subscribe, and you'll find it quite interesting and actually addictive. Police Off the Cuff, I'm with Bill a lot on that show. Him and Mark DeMeo started it. They were both stand-up comics. They started to do, like, I guess, kind of funny stories. Then they were interviewing different members of the police department across the country they were doing. And then we morphed into now this Police Off the Cuff after hours real crime stories, and we've been doing a lot of that. And great people involved: Bill, Mark, Duty Ron Licardi, just great people. And subscribe. I think you're going to find a lot of the feedback we get in the comments is I can't watch TV anymore. I'm addicted to you guys. So let's hope that it continues.
Absolutely. On my end, if you don't know where to find me by now, Twitter, Mike in New Haven, Instagram, original_MC1, LinkedIn, Mike Colón, and then just type in MIC_D so you can find the podcast and then connect with me on that profile. I might be happy to do so. Sports Business Line, if you have any sports inquiries related to the podcast, as we do that as well, hit me up at 917-727-0891 or email me the Colón on Sports, I should say, COLON on sports @gmail.com. As far as other inquiries for the podcast, law enforcement, fire service, news, and anything else, you can call me at 917-781-6189, or you can email me the Colón Report, THECOLON report @gmail.com. My YouTube channel is MC's Audio, MC_S Audio, and we're everywhere else that you get your podcast. Coming up on the Mike Maven podcast, I mentioned this last episode. We're going to be going back to the news aspect of the podcast next week. Tamsin Fidel, news anchor for WPIX 11, who was originally on the show way back in episode 12, will be rejoining me to discuss what it's been like being a news anchor the last year during the pandemic and what's gone into that. And also Christopher Strom, an author and retired NYPD sergeant who also worked in the intelligence division like Phil, will be joining the show August 17th. So a couple of really interesting shows on tap. In the meantime, on behalf of retired NYPD Detective 2nd grade Phil Grimaldi, I am Mike Colón, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone.